Hamlet. So, Francis Bacon was not only the author of all the Shakespearean plays which were blowing the whistle on the Rothschild faction way back in the day, exposing the chicanery and the inner workings of the elite in the guise of entertainment, just like they do now with movies. This is when it first got started, that tradition. Francis Bacon was also responsible for writing The New Atlantis, a work unfinished, written by the Right Honorable Francis Lord Verulam, Viscount St. Albans. You can't really see it here, but that graph at the bottom of this page indicates time being coaxed out of the cave by a curious winged being that looks pretty darn devilish to me. Now, what's really going on here, again, is a prophecy about the forming of America. In fact, the word America is actually used in this document. This was the key document that was used to inspire people to colonize America as a way of fulfilling prophecies that Bacon was aware of that said that Atlantis needed to rise again at the end of the age because it would be a transitional period that would usher in the golden age that so many traditions prophesied. When the movie 2012 was released, it's actually a readaptation of Graham Hancock's book, Fingerprints of the Gods, which I now know because I was with Graham Hancock in his car driving to his house in Bath, England from the London Heathrow Airport, and he told me that he optioned the rights to them and he got a lot of money for it. So they used the story of Atlantis sinking to tell the story of 2012 because they think the same thing is going to happen now that they have records of having happened in Atlantis. So you're seeing images of mass doom and destruction, buildings falling all over the place, but this small group of people inside this plane you see here are some of the only people that get to survive while everybody else is destroyed. Notice that there's lots of symbolism that's very anti-Christianity. In this case, the collapsing of religion symbolized by the falling of the Jesus statue onto a huge crowd of people, if you look at the bottom, all getting ready to smash them, because this is their sarcastic view of conventional religion. And this was also a very curious symbolic gesture that was made, because what you're seeing is the U.S., if you watch the film, it's the USS John F. Kennedy, the freighter, that hits the White House in 2012. This movie was made after Obama won the election. John F. Kennedy, what's the connection with that? He was assassinated by who? These friends of ours, who were symbolized with the Pentagon with a swastika in it. So they actually threatened the president openly in the movie trailer and in the movie by taking the USS John F. Kennedy and destroying the White House with it. And the president in the White House in 2012 was what race? Black. Thank you. Danny Glover. So then you also see the marginalization of people in our field, played by Woody Harrelson, which, by the way, I thought the character was hilarious, but let's not kid ourselves. He was meant to symbolize Art Bell and folks like you and me who are into this stuff and make us look like we're crazy and wackos, even though he ends up being right and the earth is going through all this crazy stuff. So you're seeing all these images of mass destruction. Now, this is honestly what they think is going to happen. But remember, they inherited like 5 generations watered down version of the original prophecies, which the closest you can get to the original is, again, Zoroastrianism. As I said before, Zoroastrianism was the original Aryan race, which was not white, that came out of Siberia and migrated down and went in 2 directions. One direction went off into Iran. The other direction went off into India. One strain created Hinduism. The other strain created Zoroastrianism, which eventually turned into Islam. The seeds of Islam were planted in Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster's prophecies do say there are going to be problems at the end of the age, but they do not say that it's going to be the destruction of Earth as we know it. Atlantis might have happened that way, but that's not what's happening to us. So these prophecies are all misunderstood. So all this doom and gloom, all this fear-mongering stuff is only mind control intended to get people to think negative when they look at 2012 so that nobody wants to go there because they don't want to be psychologically bruised by the idea that their comfort level and their security level could be destroyed. So here are the arks, which again is just like the story of Noah's Ark, which was originally the saga epic of Gilgamesh in the Sumerian scriptures. These are the boats that are eventually set free that help to colonize the New Age, taken straight out of Graham Hancock's material, Fingerprints of the Gods, which they optioned. So there's the boats, in case you haven't seen the film. I just spoiled the whole ending for you. So they're trying to say, some of the mainstream media is trying to say it's not the end of the world after all. They don't want it to be totally fear-oriented. This was a very fascinating thing that came my way. A major climate change occurred 5,200 years ago, evidence suggesting history could repeat itself. And this guy, glaciologist Lonnie Thompson, has gone through and found all kinds of amazing evidence from drilling ice cores from all over the world and found there was a nearly catastrophic climate change some 5,200 years ago. How many people know how long the Mayan calendar is here? It's 5,125 years. It's only 75 years off. Do you think maybe carbon dating could be wrong by about 75 years? Heck yeah. Nobody ever mentioned the fact that this cycle of 5,200 years is identical to the Mayan calendar, which clearly shows that the Mayan calendar has some sort of symbolism in it, which is not just metaphorical, but it actually corresponds to cycles in the earth that are going to do things. Then we have to figure out what kind of cycle is going to make the earth do this, have a cataclysm. And is the cataclysm really the point? In my book, and what I'm going to get into on Monday at the Holiday Inn, which is right down here on 8th Street, it's going to be from 7, I believe it starts at 6. Does anybody remember what it starts? 4 o'clock? Okay, I'll be there, don't worry. I live there, so I'll be there. Anyway, it starts at 4 o'clock. We have 1 hour off for dinner at 6. So it's a total of 4 hours. And we might run over a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble, but if we can, we'll do it. So, point is, on Monday, I'm going to talk about all the other levels of the Mayan calendar that I've since discovered to show all these cycles. The bottom line is this. What I've now discovered, the new sizzle that I've put into my book, is that the rate of time can change in a given area. In other words, I could actually speed up the rate of time on this stage to the point that you would actually see me. If I wanted to, I could walk around and I'd be walking really fast like you're watching a videotape fast-forwarding and rewinding. The only problem is that when you start doing that, I would now be phasing out of this reality, which would mean that there would start to be this mist that would appear around me, and I wouldn't be visible to you in such a solid form. As time speeds up, if you're outside the realm in which it's speeding up, and I can go into a lot more detail about this on Monday, and I will, if you're outside the area that's speeding up, things become kind of they become more translucent or even transparent or even invisible. The rate of time on a quantum level represents the speed that things are moving. If time speeds up, then quantum movement is going to speed up. So if you want to think about it in very specific terms, this goes back to the Russian physicist Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev now. If you have heat in an object, that is an increase in the flow of time. It's a whole new way of looking at things. An increase in the rate of time's passage within an object actually generates heat that you can measure. So when the Earth suddenly gets an increase in heat, which is climate change, which is what you're seeing in these ice core samples, that actually means the physics of space and time is changing. That's what the Mayans say they were tracking. And we're just now starting to put together a case for how that works. So I actually did make it on TV talking about this. But if you guys saw it, it was horrible. I apologize for that. They only used me for less than 60 seconds and basically took one of the only things I said that could be construed as doom and gloom, and that's what they ran with. All the other stuff I told you about how it's positive didn't make the cut at all. They said, well, there's many legends about an upheaval in 2012. Cut next. Upheaval, which is the closest they could get to imply that I was also agreeing with the idea that it was going to be a massive pole shift in 2012, which I don't. But here I was. This is my big television. Hopefully there will be another one after this. You can actually see my name and my website address. So we're also working on the film. Now, this is the film that was done with the guy who did the movie for Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan was one of the best debunkers out there. How ironic and how wonderful it is that I got Carl Sagan's screenwriter working for me. Can I get an amen on that? All right. The tide turns, doesn't it? It goes full circle. Convergence could be just as big as contact if we play our cards right. Jim has multiple groups that have $20, $30, $40 million on the table ready to finance a movie, make it. So things are really moving very well on that front. Now, if all of these 2012 prophecies were just ancient legends, and there was no other validity to them, then we could easily dismiss them and agree with skeptics and say, oh yeah, we're all a bunch of crazies here. But this is not just another ordinary time in history. That thing I was talking about in which the flow of time is changing is actually happening, and it's causing cataclysms on the earth which lead to moments of triumph like this, where the koala, which normally, believe it or not, is actually aggressive, he'll scratch you with his claws, was now willing to accept water from a human being. And I have some other photographs I'll put in on Monday in which koalas are now actually coming up to people on bicycles, asking for food, walking into people's houses, taking baths in their sink. And it's very, very cute pictures. Everybody's going, oh, it's incredible. So these human events, these upheavals, these miserable things that happen to us are all part of interplanetary climate changes, not just the Earth. The whole solar system is doing this. And there's very compelling evidence for that. But that's related to an increase in the flow of time, as I've said. It's a time field change. It's not temperature. Temperature increase is a time increase. When the vibrations go up, heat increases. That's what you're seeing. The flow of time, the actual speed of time on the quantum level is changing. When that happens, it also reprograms DNA because we're dealing with an intelligent energy. Not just some bland thing that makes things hotter because time is speeding up. It actually reprograms DNA. Here's the evidence. Doctors David Rope and James Sepkoski go through the fossil record. 26 million year cycles appear as these peaks that you see on this graph. This is where suddenly all over the world, all marine fossils spontaneously upgrade to newer forms of life. And there's almost nothing that happens in between. Then there's a 62 million year cycle that was derived from the same body of data going back 542 million years, not 250 like you see in this one. Notice the 250 on the bottom left there. Now look on the bottom right here, you see 542. It's twice as long. But they found another cycle 62 million years long. 62 million years is almost exactly 1/4 of the galaxy's rotational period. The galaxy rotates about 250 million years. Shave that down to 248. 62 is exactly 1/4 of that. So that could represent some sort of galactic astrology based on a geometry, based on, in this case, the square, which is really an octahedron, a diamond shape, 2 Egyptian pyramids base to base. The pyramid has 4 corners. There's 4 corners in the geometry.